Hey guys, my last week was unexpectedly full of topics related to ways of working, agile, scrum, company culture, and once again I saw how different opinions on agile are. That's why, as a software engineer who worked in both traditional and agile teams, I wanted to share my highly subjective opinion on the matter. First, to give you some background. I mentioned before that I work as a software engineer, but for the last half a year, I've been supporting my current team in questions related to Agile and Scrum. Since we don't have an Agile coach or a Scrum Master in our team, I kind of volunteer to do that, or at least to help with basics, since I don't think I can devote more than 10 or 20% of my time for it. I was motivated to do this mostly because in the past I had an amazing experience working in agile teams, and I was convinced that this will benefit both the project and the team on the long run. So to make it crystal clear, since I am not a certified agile coach nor my job role is a scrum master, my job opportunities do not depend much on whether team or company overall agile or not, yet my happiness as a software engineer does. To explain this, I collected 5 reasons why I enjoyed working in agile teams. Reason number 1: empowered to make decisions. Having a knowledgeable product manager or product owner is cool and extremely important, but does it mean that you as an engineer cannot bring any good ideas? Totally not. Product owners, regardless of how cool they are, cannot know everything, and they don't have enough time for every detail. Often they might miss a low-hanging fruit opportunity, which developers can spot right away because they have a different perspective on the product. And they know what functionality is a piece of cake and which one will take weeks to implement. Imagine a situation when a product manager decided on some functionality, promised it to stakeholders, then created a spec, requested some designs, and only then brought it to developers, only to realize that what he promised already is way complex to implement, and it will take weeks or even months to develop this feature. And developers could have suggested how to implement 80% of that feature in 10% of the time. And those 80% might be totally sufficient for the customer, but now we made a commitment for a way more complex feature. Similarly, QAs, people who know project inside out, can come up with really cool ideas how to make a feature more simple and user-friendly. Sadly, what happens instead in old-fashioned teams is that QAs are solely responsible for finding bugs or writing automated tests, but not making any decisions based on their findings or not sharing opinion of how things can be improved. Because of course we have smarter people to make those decisions, let's hire more managers. So the mindset of traditional teams is that unless you're a product manager or a designer sometimes, don't even bother sharing your opinion. It's not your responsibility, take the spec and implement what it says. And from my observations, the success rate of an idea doesn't really depend whether it came from an educated product owner or just an engineer. The amount of experiments and A/B tests which we did in those agile teams where I worked was skyrocketing, and really cool improvements came out of those collaborations. Traditional development makes lots of assumptions about what user wants, what user needs, and then waits till the latest moment to validate the result. And as a developer, I feel deep frustration working on a feature which most probably will never be used or will be really cumbersome to use. Reason number 2: deliver often, get feedback frequently, and adapt. This is such a basic thing for Agile, so it hurts to observe teams who work on a project for more than a year, and when they deliver a product, they realize that no one needs it, they don't have customers. This in fact is applicable both on a higher scale for products and on a smaller one for individual features. I mentioned before that we were coming up with lots of ideas for different features. What I learned is that it is extremely difficult to predict whether an idea will be successful or not. User research definitely helps in giving direction. However, irrationality of human mind and tons of other factors make it very difficult to predict how users will react to this particular feature and how this feature will affect other functionality in your product. You're probably aware how many A/B tests Facebook runs, And you might assume that at least they put enough effort and money into user research, so why they cannot figure out in advance how users will behave to particular features? Because it's incredibly difficult. Reason number 3: courage, respect, and openness. Admitting that you don't know something can be really tough. But can you really know everything? So why we are making such a big deal out of it? It is totally okay to lack certain skills or knowledge as long as you can learn them and you are motivated to do so. The problem arises when your team members discourage asking questions by saying or even behaving in a way that makes you uncomfortable and embarrassed. So next time you prefer to waste half a day to fight with a problem which could be solved in 5 minutes just by asking someone to help you. I heard some of those remarks, and my personal favorites are: this can be done in 5 minutes. Maybe you should read a book. Isn't it a sign of a good developer to know those concepts? So, admittedly, people who say this might not mean any harm, but it definitely discourages and harms team dynamic. Same with suggesting new ideas. Are you comfortable sharing an unusual concept or a crazy idea, or you are afraid that you might sound stupid and people are not interested in what you are saying? Agile philosophy emphasizes a lot the importance of team dynamics, engagement, and trust. So in teams where I worked, there were never stupid questions or ideas. Knowledge sharing is such an important concept, it's a basis for everything. Actually, to emphasize how cross-functional we are, or we were, we prefer to avoid labels such as software developer, quality assurance engineer, designer, and replace those with just one role, product engineer. This approach has two benefits. First, it helps spreading work in the moments of misbalance, say someone got sick, or for some reason QAs have an overload of work, or some other reasons, so we can help each other and share responsibilities. Secondly, people naturally feel good when they learn something new. Admittedly, developers didn't really like QA and stuff, and we could have done a better job on that, for sure. I remember how we were teaching our QAs and designers the basics of coding, which they can later use in their job, by giving them some small tasks and observing how happy they become when the program they wrote or some change they made works. This is so cool. Reason number 4: face-to-face conversations. Face-to-face conversations make a huge difference. While our traditional work culture prescribes writing dry emails, putting requests to Jira, documenting stuff in various tools, and using lots of processes and policies in order to avoid face-to-face conversation, this only slows down teams and keeps us in industrial age. Often there is just no need for this. Talking face-to-face saves lots of time and frustration, keeps focus on the topic, decreases amount of the waste, and adds engagement to the conversation. That's not saying that you should not document. You should probably update the backlog with the latest discussions, add key points to the documentation tool, but don't fall into a trap that emails are good for documenting stuff. An email going for days, sometimes weeks, is of no means a good documentation. Weeks later, it will be difficult to find information there. Admittedly, face-to-face is not for every team, but even those teams who have all means to do that often tend to avoid such kind of interactions. I recently read in a developer portal that in 2018, people no longer talk to each other or call each other, instead they write text. And this is simply not true and shouldn't be like this. Reason number 5: flow. I can totally imagine that some people prefer to work with vague goals without clear priorities on several things at the same time, jumping from one task to another, feeling proud how flexible they are. They are definitely extremely busy. However, busy doesn't mean productive. And Agile with Scrum highly discourages this behavior. Scrum suggests a set of practices to define goals and eliminate distractions. This takes away unnecessary stress and makes it possible to immerse fully into the activity at hand. Sounds like a cliché, but it really makes a big difference. If you're working in a team where priorities change every day and management brings you tasks which should have been done yesterday, just know this is not how it should be. Do you need to be agile to have all of this? Do you have to follow Scrum? Probably not. There might be other ways to reach same goals. I just happen to see it working with Agile, and your story might be totally different. I would be really happy to hear about your experience. So why do we have so much controversy around these topics? Everyone is different, and I can imagine that different people will have different expectations and preferences in work environment. I heard once an opinion from a software developer that since this is work and you do it for money, not for your personal engagement, you shouldn't be seeking friendship with your colleagues. They are not your family. Luckily, I don't have to agree with this. Taking into account that on average we spend more than 40 hours a week in the office, I do care what I am working on, with whom and how. Only when I'm engaged, motivated and find my work to be meaningful, I will bring the most to the project. And the best teams I worked with in the past were as family to me. And apparently my feelings are not as uncommon as some people might think. Some time ago, Google did a project with codename Aristotle, a research on what makes teams successful. They analyzed 180 teams. Study focused on team dynamics, skills, personal traits, emotional intelligence. The results were quite surprising. The most effective teams stood out by having the highest level of psychological safety. In other words, they were not afraid to admit a mistake, suggest a crazy idea, or ask a dumb question. Speaking of my old team, we were so united and crazy that once we did an experiment and went to an isolated part of Norway for a week so that we can focus on brainstorming and developing a feature. The result we were able to achieve over that week were at least double as high as what we ever were able to accomplish in the office. I can't imagine a team with higher motivations than we were at that point of time. I'm curious, what is your experience? What do you value in work and what would be the ideal working environment for you? Thank you for watching and see you next time!